Hi Krishna. So we're at the foothill. Behind you is the
Greenwich
Royal Observatory,
which is where time began.
right?
Or where time begins. Greenwich Mean Time is the median longitude line, which time begins. So like that.
Very interesting.
And behind us is the city of London. So it's supposed to be the best view in London.
Apart from us two, of course.
Haha. So also we're sitting in the baking sun.
Yeah.
Even though it is only 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Here, it is certainly going to be the hottest day of the year in London today. So
Yeah.
we're going to read Bhagavatam
We're gonna
because
read
that's
it
what
quick.
you do even when it's cooking.
All right.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai, jai, jai. So it's Canto. Oh, right. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All right, Canto 3, Chapter 8, Text 7.
No, text 8.
Really? I've got my marker on this.
Yeah, it's text 8. We read the last one.
All right. Text 8. Chapter is called Manifestation of Brahma from Vishnu. The great sage Sankhiyayana was the chief amongst the transcendentalists, and when he was describing the glories of the Lord in terms of Srimad Bhagavatam, it so happened that my spiritual master Parashara and Brihaspati both heard him. Text 9. The great sage Parashara, as aforementioned, being so advised by the great sage Pulasya, spoke unto me the foremost of the Puranas, Bhagavatam. I shall also describe this before you, my dear son, in terms of my hearing, because you are always my faithful follower. Purport. The great sage of the name Pulasya is the father of all demoniac descendants.
Okay.
Right. Once upon a time, Parashara began a sacrifice in which all the demons were to be burnt to death because his father had been killed and devoured by one of them. So that's actually serious vengeance right there.
Carry on.
No, we've got to enunciate, is it?
That's when you speak loudly so they can hear.
The great sage Vashishta Muni arrived at the sacrifice and requested Parashara to stop the deadly action. And because of Vashishta's position and respect in the community of sages, Parashara could not deny the request. Parashara, having accepted the sacrifice, having stopped the sacrifice, Pulasya, the father...
Pulasya.
Oh, here we go. Pulasya.
Pulasya.
No one's doing Pilates, not in this heat. The father...
Pulasya.
All right. The father of the demons appreciated his Brahminical temperament and gave the blessing that in the future he would be a great speaker on the Vedic literatures called the Puranas, the supplements of the Vedas. Parashara's action was appreciated by Pulasya because Parashara had forgiven the demons out of his Brahminical power of forgiveness. Parashara was able to demolish all the demons in the sacrifice, for he considered demons are so made that they devour living creatures, men and animals. But why on that account should I withdraw my Brahminical qualification of forgiveness? Debatable. As the great sage of the Puranas, Parashara first of all spoke on the Srimad Bhagavat Purana, because it is the foremost of all the Puranas.
There you go. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Maitreya Muni desired to narrate the same Bhagavatam he had heard from Parashara, and Vidura was qualified to hear it because of his faithfulness and his following the instructions received from superiors. So, Srimad Bhagavatam was being narrated from time immemorial by the disciplic succession, even before the time of Vyasadeva.
There you go. So even before Vyasadeva, Bhagavatam is being spoken. That's how Vyasadeva was able to relay it to Shukadeva. But Vyasadeva is the one who wrote it down. Before that, it was always given as verbal. Shruti, spoken.
I lost my place. Oh, okay.
Or heard, with that which is heard.
The so-called historians calculate the Puranas to be only a few hundred years old. But faithfully, the Puranas existed, but factually, the Puranas existed from time immemorial, because all historical calculations by the mundaners, before all historical calculations by the mundaners and speculative philosophers. Those of you who are watching attentively, if you watched the previous video, it was 9 o'clock and the bells were tolling, and now it's 10 o'clock and the same bells are tolling.
Well, that's important, considering we're reading Bhagavatam.
I'm just saying, this little trivia.
For whom the bell tolls. So, so from this purport, we see some nice history. Prabhupada is always so expertly helping us to understand the relationships, the interactions, and the purports of Srila Prabhupada, giving us the deeper meanings and helping us to go deeper into the Bhagavatam. So, Pulasya is the father of all demoniac descendants, and he basically had upset Parashara, who was about to burn them all. And then Vashishta Muni came, and he said to Parashara Prabhu that you should stop this deadly action. It's not going to be good. Basically, it's going to cause you to give up your Brahminical qualification of forgiveness. And because Vashishta is such a respected sage amongst the community of sadhus and sages, the Parashara didn't have any choice but to give in. But Pulasya was very pleased by this, and he appreciated, and therefore he benedicted Parashara. The Parashara would give him he gave him a benediction, and that benediction was that he would be one of the greatest narrators or speakers of the Bhagavatam, of the Bhagavat Purana. So it's really, really special understanding, and therefore Maitreya heard from Parashara because Parashara is his spiritual master. So then Maitreya is speaking now to Vidura. So we have perpetually this lineage of disciplic succession and hearing and chanting, and there's often just like Shukadev Goswami speaking to Parikshit, because Parikshit is on the verge of death, having been cursed by Brahman, but yet he's going to hear Bhagavatam. And here we see that Parashara was about to kill all the demons, but out of that, which is quite an intense situation, out of that he was benedicted to be able to speak the Bhagavad Purana gloriously. So oftentimes in distressful situations, great benedictions can come if we just persevere and take shelter of the Lord, and or hear from authority. We see here that Parashara is also hearing from authority, and he's abiding by that. He's not saying, oh, Vashishta, get lost, who are you, what right do you have, doesn't have anything to do with you, which is a real modern day Western mentality. But culture communities, they hear from authority, they respect and appreciate, and they see divinity coming through authority rather than always questioning and like that and just doubting. Plus there's forgiveness, which my wife will speak on now because she's very expert in that field.
Forgive me, I'm a bit hot.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add? Is that correct?
I mean,
Apart from your hotness. She's hot. Okay, anyway, let's carry on. Text 10?
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's my turn, right?
Right.
Okay. At that time, when the three worlds were submerged in water, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu was alone, lying on his bedstead, the great snake Ananta, and although he appeared to be in slumber, in his own internal potency, free from the action of the external energy, his eyes were not completely closed. Purport. The Lord is eternally enjoying transcendental bliss by his internal potency, whereas the external potency is suspended during the time of the dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. So the internal potency is eternal and goes on perpetually, whereas the external is put on pause when it all dissolves because of the internal and the inhalation and exhalation of Mahavishnu, which isn't Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, by the way.
Text 11. Just like the strength of fire, within fuel wood, the Lord remained within the water of dissolution, submerging all the living entities in his subtle bodies. He lay in the self-invigorated energy called Kala.
Which is time.
Time. Purport. After the three worlds, the upper, lower and middle planetary systems merged into the water of dissolution, the living entities of all the three worlds remained in their subtle bodies by dint of the energy called Kala. In this dissolution, the gross bodies became unmanifest, but the subtle bodies existed, just like the water of the material creation. Thus, the material energy was not completely wound up, as is the case in the full dissolution of the material world.
Thoughts?
No.
So basically the three worlds are being submerged because it's a time of dissolution. So Garbhodakshayi Vishnu still exists. Seems he doesn't exactly merge back into Vishnu, Mahavishnu or Karnadakshayi Vishnu, but they're suspended and merged into or they become unmanifest, but they exist in their subtle forms. So this must be, maybe this is a temporary dissolution as opposed to a complete dissolution. Okay, so we'll read another one. Text 12, is it your turn?
No, it's your turn.
Yeah. The Lord lay down for 1,000 cycles of the 4 yugas in his internal potency, and by his external energy he appeared to be sleeping within the water. When the living entities were coming out for further development of their fruitive activities, actuated by the energy called Kala Shakti, he saw his transcendental body as bluish. Purport. In the Vishnu Purana, Kala Shakti is mentioned as avidya. The symptom of the influence of the Kala Shakti is that one has to work in the material world for fruitive results. The fruitive workers are described in Bhagavad Gita as mudhas, or foolish. Such foolish living entities are very enthusiastic to work for some temporary benefit within perpetual bondage. One thinks himself very clever throughout his life if he is able to leave behind him a great asset of wealth for his children, and to achieve this temporary benefit, he takes the risk of all sinful activities without knowledge that such activities will keep him perpetually bound by the shackles of material bondage. Phew, very heavy. Due to this polluted mentality and due to material sins, the aggregate combination of living entities appeared to be bluish. Interesting. Such an impetus of activity for fruitive results is made possible by the dictation of the external energy of the Lord, Kala. So, it seems that the bodies of the living entities were bluish in color due to a combination of, sinful activity?
Polluted mentality.
And polluted mentality. So just like, if you remember, they described the Jagai and Madai, their bodies were like black because they had committed so many sins. And then when Lord Chaitanya absolved them of their sinful reactions when they surrendered to him, then his body became also black because he absorbed all the sinful actions and activities, reactions. Interesting.
Text 13. The subtle subject matter of creation on which the Lord's attention was fixed was agitated by the material mode of passion, and thus the subtle form of creation pierced through his abdomen. Text 14. Piercing through, this sum total form of the fruitive activity of the living entities took the shape of the bud of a lotus flower generated from the personality of Vishnu, and by his supreme will it illuminated everything like the sun and dried up the vast waters of devastation.
So this is the lotus flower on which Lord Brahma is going to appear.
Yes, it appeared from his...
Several times. I don't remember ever reading this
Same,
section.
yeah, same. That's how I find Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. It's like layers get uncovered almost.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
did that?
As you get uncovered, of course, I'm not sure that I'm getting very uncovered. But,
Well, qualified then.
well,
Mercy,
I'm not sure
mercy
that's
case.
qualified. Mercy cases.
Disagree with something.
Yes, Kripa.
The sky is blue.
That's not. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yes, this is powerful. The lotus is coming from his navel. But
Yeah.
it's interesting. that it's
Self-born.
saying- yeah, of course, that's there. But it illuminates everything like the sun, and it dried up the vast waters of devastation. So, interesting. Carry on. I'm so
Text
excited to hear
15.
more.
Into that universal lotus flower, Lord Vishnu personally entered as the supersoul, and when it was thus impregnated with all the most material nature, the personality of Vedic wisdom, whom we call the self-born, was generated.
Who was that?
Lord Brahma.
Lord Brahma, yes. Amazing.
Purport. This lotus flower is the universal Virat form, or the gigantic form of the Lord in the material world. It becomes amalgamated in the personality of Godhead Vishnu in his abdomen at the time of dissolution. So it merges into him. And it becomes manifest at the time of creation. This is due to Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who enters into each of the universes. In this form is the sum total of all the fruitive activities of the living entities conditioned by material nature. And first of them, namely Brahma, or the controller of the universe, is generated from this lotus flower. This firstborn living being, unlike all the others, has no material father, and thus he is called self-born or Swayambhu. He goes to sleep with Narayan at the time of devastation, and when there is another creation, he is born in this way. From this description, we have the conception of three: the gross Virat form, the subtle Hiranyagarbha, and the material creative force Brahma.
Wow, this is very, very, very wonderful to read. Very powerful topic matter. Being watched by a helicopter flying in, and then over here we have a
Well, it is the G7 at the moment. You never know who that is.
yeah.
All the leaders.
Yeah.
Leaders.
Okay, should we read a couple more?
All right.
Yeah. Okay, 16. Brahma, born out of the lotus flower, could not see the world, although he was situated in the world. He could not see the world because he was situated within the world of the lotus. He therefore circumambulated all of space, and while moving his eyes in all directions, he achieved 4 heads in terms of the 4 directions. Text 17. Lord Brahma, situated in that lotus, could not perfectly understand the creation, the lotus, or himself. At the end of the millennium, the air of devastation began to move the water and the lotus in great circular waves. At the end of the millennium, the air of devastation began to move the water and the lotus in great circular waves. Okay, let's read. Purport. Lord Brahma was perplexed about his creation, the lotus, and the world, even though he tried to understand them for 1 millennium. So 1 millennium passed with Lord Brahma basically being kind of in ignorance and darkness and being in confusion. And then the lotus and the waves started to move in a circular motion. Tried to understand them for 1 millennium, which is beyond calculation in the solar years of human beings. No one therefore can know the mystery of the creation and cosmic manifestation simply by mental speculation. The human being is so limited in his capacity that without the help of the Supreme, he can hardly understand the mystery of the will of the Lord in terms of creation, continuance, and destruction. Interesting. Any thoughts?
It's interesting that it took Lord Brahma 1 millennium. He couldn't understand what was going on. So then Prabhupada is saying that, the human being is so limited in his capacity
Very
that he
nice.
can't. How is he supposed to understand?
Yeah, Lord Brahma, the self-born Swayambhu.
Yes, the Prabhupada says that without the help of the Supreme, the human cannot understand the mystery of the will of the Lord.
And of course, as we see when we read on, that Lord Brahma couldn't understand until he got help from the Supreme Lord also, who will help him first by giving the two syllables ta and pa, tapa, to which he...
Don't tell him because you're spoiling it.
All right, it's a spoiler. Sorry if that was a spoiler.
What's the point of reading it?
Okay. All right, make sure you mark your book correctly for next time.
All right.
We're going to be reading 18.
18. All right, yeah, sorry. I've got to go.
Thank you all very much. It's a little warm.
It's extremely
I love it.
hot.
I love the heat, but
No,
my wife,
it's not normal.
from India. She is
I'm not
liking
from
the heat.
India, I'm from South London.
Sorry, I come from South London.
We don't sit in the sun like this.
All right, we're going to go. Thank you very much, everyone. Please, if you want to send Srimad Bhagavatams, get in touch with us. Put
All
some
right.
comments. And
Just get in touch.
We'll speak to you later.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna.